Euthanasia is being offered as a form of compassion, an act of mercy. But is it really? We'll talk about that and more in this edition of Life Matters with Brian Johnston. Brian Johnston is the Western Director of the National Right to Life Committee. He has served in many capacities while advocating for innocent lives, as California Commissioner on Aging, as Chairman of the California Pro-Life Council, on the board of the National Legal Center for the Medically Dependent and Disabled. And now here's our host, Brian Johnston.
Well, welcome back to Life Matters. Today we have a special program. As you know, our program is dedicated to the issue of life, to the battle for our culture, and the very real battle of ideas that are influencing our culture. On this program, I was interviewed by a good friend, Craig Roberts, who has his own show in the Bay Area and has for the last 30 years. That show is called The Lifeline. Craig had called me about Senate Bill 148 in California, which allows nursing homes to declare residents incompetent. They're non-terminal, but they're saying they're incompetent. These patients are often conscious, but the nursing home has decided they want that bed. They want to free things up. No one else cares about this patient. We're going to take away their food and water. Very important issue. Listen in.
The issue of so-called physician-assisted suicide is one that we have covered and have battled for almost 30 years now. And sadly, as you know, recently we lost a lot of ground in that battle with the passage of some laws in California that have allowed certain types of so-called physician-assisted suicide to become legal. I have argued since the beginning that most of this is less about compassion, quality of life, freedom of choice, and all of these other interesting and somewhat convenient euphemisms for what is essentially the ability of society to dispose of people once they no longer serve a purpose. Now, I know that sounds cruel, impolite, inhumane, and it's also, unfortunately, terribly accurate, as witnessed the latest volley in this war. We're joined now by Brian Johnston, Western Regional Director with the National Right to Life Committee. He also, by the way, spent some 20 years as an advocate for the medically vulnerable. He's testified in numerous state and national legislatures, including on such important topics as physician-assisted suicide, and he served as a California Commissioner on Aging. He joins us now by phone. Brian, I know that this is your passion at twofold, both at the intersection of caring for the vulnerable elderly in our society and also on the topic of life. This is a topic that intersects now on both of those subjects, and we are particularly concerned about now new developments in Senate Bill 481 that essentially allows now even nursing homes to be able to engage in abuse of patients, and it's all potentially perfectly legal. Tell us what's going on.
Yes, Greg, well, thanks for that. The reality is that, unfortunately, our culture has changed dramatically in the last 30, 40 years, both in its use of medicine. We've talked about that, and clearly the passage of Roe versus Wade was significant because before that the laws protected those vulnerable children, and doctors had sworn they would not do abortions because it's taking human life, and that was in the Hippocratic Oath. In addition to the idea of poisoning a patient, it explicitly says, I will not give a woman a pessary to perform an abortion. So doctors have always, up until that date in American history, they've always been concerned with helping people. If they couldn't help, that they would comfort, but never kill. An abortion kills a human being, and obviously the pro-life movement rose to that occasion to speak out about that. But many pro-lifers don't realize, as you just mentioned, that the vulnerable are suspected of being unwanted. They're targeted, if you will, at the other end of life, as you pointed out. And we've talked about Peter Singer, who is the father of utilitarian bioethics. If someone is no longer useful, it's really better to end their life. That's that worldview. So SB-481 is a bill by Senator Pan, and many listeners will remember Senator Pan's name. He's a doctor, senator, and he carries all of Planned Parenthood's bills and many other questionable bioethical bills. SB-481 is a bill in response to a court case. Under current law, the directors of nursing homes can make decisions for someone if they don't have a durable power of attorney in place. The reality that I have seen in nursing homes, I've been in many, as you mentioned, I've been around this issue for a while. You don't see medical intervention in nursing homes. There's no heart transplant in nursing homes. There's no invasive procedure of any kind in a nursing home, other than the provision of food and water or a drip, something along those lines. The problem is that what SB 481 does is it authorizes a nursing home administrator to make every decision that an individual can make, to actually substitute judgment. And the doctrine of substitute judgment is very, very important. It says that if you have certain rights, but we consider you incompetent to make decisions regarding those rights, we're going to substitute our judgment for yours. So it's as if you're doing it. So in California, it is legal for someone to say, you know what, I'm going to kill myself, and I'm going to do it by dehydration. And that goes back to the Bouvier case in 92, but a case where a quadriplegic woman, non-terminal, quadriplegic woman was depressed, and she was granted the right to kill herself through dehydration. That's her right. Well, the problem is that right then, under substituted judgment, is granted to anyone who has your voice now. And that's what happens when you're declared incompetent. You do not have to be comatose to be incompetent. You can be perfectly awake. You can be lucid. You're just considered incapable of understanding the deeper and important issues, and so you're declared. Most people in nursing homes usually are declared incompetent, but a family member or someone else is making decisions for them. In this case, it would be the administrator of the nursing home. And the only requirement is they hand the incompetent person a note that says, you've been declared incompetent. We now can have our way with you. So this is a very ominous change in the law because, if someone really is incompetent, handing them a note, metaphorically speaking, to cover your legal rear end. Well, if they're incompetent, how are they supposed to understand this note, and what are they going to do about it? So this bill looks to be protecting the patient, but in fact, it's further equipping the nursing home. And if you haven't heard about it, there's been many stories. It doesn't get the kind of coverage, but nursing home abuse is widespread across the nation. And we're looking at a nation that it's changed its view of medicine, but we've also changed our view of caring for the elderly as a culture.
Well, and sadly, as you're suggesting, Brian, this has moved from places that people go to live and to receive care to next places where people go to be warehoused at a very expensive price, I might add, to now suddenly places where people go to die. And I mean, let's spin this for a moment for ourselves. With 80 million baby boomers, 10,000 of us every day become eligible for retirement. We're not talking that many years down the road when we're going to be talking about us. This is not the proverbial them that's out there, these old people that we don't know much about, maybe mom and dad's age or grandparents' age, but it just kind of nebulously seems to be somewhere out in the far, far distance. I got news for you, folks. This is going to be our own reality that we will be facing. And how pleasant it is to say to a mother or father as the son or daughter comes and says, Mom, we found a beautiful place to take you to die. Really? Well, that sounds attractive, and yet the reality is that's exactly what's happening here. And more disturbing is the opportunity for nefarious activity to take place, because under the terms of this particular bill, it grants a tremendous amount of leeway for a nursing home where they could cover up, everything from incidents of abuse to failures in proper and appropriate care, all the way up to and including, hey, time to move you out because we got a patient that's going to pay twice as much for this room. Don't think for a minute. Don't be foolish and think for a minute that this can't happen, or the authorities certainly would never allow that to occur. We're about to make these stretch from not only is it going to happen, it's going to be encouraged by the very government that runs the state.
You're listening to Life Matters.
The California legislature is considering a bill, SB 481, which allows nursing homes to declare a conscious patient to be incompetent and then deprive them of food and water. These dependent patients need protection, not dismissal. Urge your legislator to oppose this bill. If you don't know who your state representatives are, please call California Pro-Life at 1-800-924-2490. Give your name and street address, and we will send a message to your state legislator on your behalf, asking them to oppose SB-481. Leave your email address, and we will let you know how your legislator votes. Please speak up for the vulnerable. Call 1-800-924-2490 and oppose SB-481.
And now back to Life Matters.
All right, down the slippery slope we continue to go. It's amazing the things that we're willing to do to ourselves, to our loved ones, in the name of compassion or quality of life, when the real agenda here is disposing of people that are no longer useful, no longer capable of earning a wage to pay taxes or of any serviceable value to other human beings. And so rather than having to do things like change bedpans and, clean their dentures for them, let's just get rid of them. I mean, after all, isn't that the humane thing to do? Should we allow them to continue to suffer? Well, certainly if they were able to make a decision on their own, they wouldn't want to live like this. And therefore, we find a convenient way to justify our barbarism. Brian Johnston, Western Regional Director with the National Right to Life Committee, is with us today talking about Senate Bill 481. And it seems to me that this bill is wrought with potentiality for abuse by nursing homes, or, for that matter, loved ones who'd love to get rid of grandma or grandpa and dispose of them so they can get their hands on the assets.
Well, that's an unfortunate darker side of this, too, is that it isn't just the facilities. We've changed our view of how we view elders. Many other cultures, the older you get, the more honored you are, the more deeply honored you are. That isn't quite the case, and as you mentioned, I've been to many nursing homes in California and in other states. Some of them are extraordinary, great places. The frontier homes in Alaska are very impressive. Every one of them, they have an aviary, a sizable aviary of birds, singing birds and exotic birds in the nursing home. It's like going outside when you walk around the nursing home, and it encourages ambulatory care. There's so many things that we do. Israel, how they treat the elderly, and Israel, and also in their medical practice, how they treat the comatose. If someone is comatose in an Israeli hospital, what they do is they sit them up anyways, and they comb their hair anyways, and they play their favorite music, and they give them water by mouth as much as possible, and, they rub their muscles, give them, muscular massage, and treat them as if they are somebody. The typical response in the United States is, oh, well, they're a vegetable. Well, a vegetable, that's not really a medical term. It's become one. But no, that describes an entity that's not a human being. So when you say somebody, oh, they're in a vegetative state, bang, you sign the sentence. That's how you treat them. And that's how medicine in the U.S. treats people who are comatose. And yet there's many, many stories. They comes out regularly. Very often people, they may seem to not understand. But they'll tell you, no, I heard everything that was said. And we don't fully understand. I have good friends that are neurologists, and they'll admit they don't fully understand this thing that they call a vegetative state. We're still learning new things about the human being. So if a medical situation comes up and that person is medically vulnerable, the best presumption is let's do all that we can for them. Instead, the presumption is we need to stop doing anything for them, even providing food and water, and that means you're intending their death. So this is a very precipitous change, dramatic change in medicine and how we view other human beings.
Well, I've never quite understood the association that some try to place between an individual who perhaps is at the end of their life or going through medical struggles, to compare them with vegetables. I mean, why not say, well, he's in a permanent apple state. Well, he's suffering like an orange. I mean, it makes no sense because there is no comparison between the two. We're talking about living human beings that have family and children and feelings and dreams and a soul, and yet we wish to somehow make ourselves feel better about what we want to do to them by dehumanizing them. Am I right?
It's ominous and it's sad, and you can see how we can slip. We're very subjective in our thoughts and feelings, and it's sad. We've talked about that before, but it's part of human nature. It's how we feel. But it's critically important. I know this, that, I've debated some people who have killed their spouses, more than one. And the first thing I say is, you know what, I feel bad for Mr. Humphrey because my wife has not gone through cancer. I haven't had to face that. And really what's needed is resources to help not just the patient, the wife in that case, but also the primary caregiver needs intervention and help. So I empathize with the emotions, but I also understand whenever I've made serious mistakes in my life, it's because of my emotion. And when we exalt emotions as being our primary analysis tool, when we allow life and death decisions to be made based on emotions, how you feel, that's what assisted suicide is. Well, they're asking for it. They feel like they want to die. So we should be free to kill them because of their emotional state. And that's critically important to realize. Again, the whole masking of this, well, they might have 6 months to live. Any honest oncologist will tell you the inaccuracies of such a prognosis. And that the critical element in assisted suicide and in all of these medical decisions, sadly, the trigger is ultimately coming down to someone's feelings and emotions about this. And that's the worst possible way to make decisions. In this case with 481, sadly now it's gotten one step worse. It's going to be monetary, at least on behalf of the institutions, freeing up beds, and then, as you pointed out, the even darker side, sometimes family members. It isn't just emotions. It's what we can do with those assets. And so there are so many aspects of our culture. This isn't happening in a vacuum. This isn't just about, freedom of choice. This is a very serious change in how medicine is viewing vulnerable patients. And if you're a Christian listener, you need to equip yourself on this. You need to understand this battle is very real. And it's a battle of ideas, but lives are truly at stake in this battle.
You're listening to Life Matters. Are the average members of your church ready to face the seductive allure offered by compassion in dying? If you ask them, we think you'll find that they are not. Many well-meaning Christians are easily swayed by the emotional arguments put forth by euthanasia advocates. We have resources to help you meet this challenge. Call us and ask for our group education packet, which contains the powerful documentary Death as a Salesman, starring Joni Eareckson and Brian Johnston. Call California Pro-Life at 800-924-2490 or visit us online at californiaprolife.org. Life Matters is a production of the California Pro-Life Council, the state affiliate of National Right to Life. And now back to Life Matters.
What I don't understand is this must be receiving resounding support from nursing homes across the state who see this as an opportunity, quite frankly, in a very twisted fashion, to be able to not only dispense with patients in a sense that are no longer profitable, but also to help cover up their mistakes.
Dr. Pan has said, no, this is so we can make beneficial decisions. And so we offered a suggested amendment. Well, that's fine. We certainly want that to be the case. But having been at nursing homes, the reality is that, as I said, there is no invasive procedures done at nursing homes. The nature of the decisions that are made are really those of non-treatment. And so the amendment was suggested that, well, fine then, provided that no deleterious or harmful decisions are made in the name of the patient. See, all of these decisions are being made through substituted judgment. So they're literally being done in the name of the patient. That's the irony. In the name of autonomy. You have autonomy. You can do whatever you want. And I'm going to assume that power to me to make decisions for you. So it's a little bit of a convoluted analysis. And our suggested amendments were fine as long as this decision you're making isn't to end their life or to harm them in any way. Then fine, go ahead. But they don't want those amendments. And that is very suspect given our present milieu of widespread nursing home abuse and neglect, and it's widespread. It's not just here and there. This is pretty regular because our society now has viewed nursing homes not for nursing people along, but really as warehouses to keep people until they're dead.
Well, and Brian, the problem with this is it's only going to get worse. We're talking about 80 million adults. That's almost a third of the United States population, the entire United States population that is in that baby boomer category. And as more of us grow older, we look at the expense of living in an area like the Bay Area, and eventually you're going to find yourself in a physical condition where you can no longer care for yourself. It may be impractical for family to help you out or to care for you. And so suddenly, what does it mean? Well, it means a huge boon in people that are operators of these nursing care facilities where they've got, millions of potential clients lined up. And when you grasp the reality that 1 out of every 2 of us, if you're listening right now and you're driving home and your spouse is with you, think about the fact that 1 of the 2 of you will spend at least some time of your life in a nursing care facility. Imagine the opportunity here for people that have less than altruistic ideas at heart when it comes to caring for the elderly, the most vulnerable of our society, and yet no protections built in to make sure that there is a means by which, first and foremost, the best interest and protection of the life of the patient is put front and center. And clearly this bill does anything but that.
Yes. Obviously, we want to get people alarmed about what's happening and aware of this bill, to oppose this bill. There are positive answers. I do want to mention that. And as serious as this battle is, and it's a serious battle, there are answers. You mentioned one. As much as possible, I encourage people for home care. We have, as a larger family, has done that with family members. Many folks listening have done that. It's very rewarding, ultimately. It's not easy. Can do it. I encourage that. Also, the Christian Medical and Dental Society has certain care homes that follow the traditional Hippocratic tradition. Again, the Hippocratic tradition predated the Christian culture, but when Christianity kind of became the dominant culture in Rome, they said this Hippocratic tradition is good. That's not being followed anymore. You need to understand that the reason we honor doctors in our society is because they at one time swore to only help people. Well, they're not doing that anymore. So you want to go to doctors, physicians, medical professionals. Again, the Christian Medical and Dental Society has a list of good doctors you can go to. There's certain Catholic fraternal organizations for medical doctors. But you need to know there's still a war even within those entities, within the church at large. There's a war, and we already know that. If you're involved in any Christian work, you know that not every church that calls itself a church is necessarily adhering to the important essential doctrines of valuing human life. So this is a serious battle, and I think it's important that we be awake to it, that we be willing to make a stand where we need to make a stand. SB-481 is that opportunity here in California, and the larger battle is going to continue on. So be aware of this. And, Greg, you're exactly right that the tsunami, what we have come to call the silver tsunami, is coming on us, all of Western society. Europe has it worse. And so the question is, what are you going to do about it? And we need to have the answer. We need to have the ability to give the right answer and to encourage and exhort others to do the same, to care for those, to lift up the weak, and to protect the lives of the vulnerable.
It's going to be important, I think, Brian, for everybody to start talking about this because, sadly, as you point out, not only do the routine abuses that take place, and I'm not implicating every retirement home, every senior care facility in the state. I'm just saying it happens more often than you would realize, and it is not generally a topic of the news. And so how do we go about spreading the warning of the dangers that are inherent to SB 481 to get this thing stopped in its tracks?
You know, it is talking about it, and you can go to California Pro-Life Council on SB 481. You know, you've been great, Greg, because we encourage people to contact their legislator. Some folks don't know because you go into the bureaucracy of state government, it gets confusing. At the California Pro-Life Council, go ahead. If you give your address, we will look that up, and we decided to do this on 2 bills this session, on this bill and also on the pro-abortion license plate, which I don't think we've talked about that one at length yet. But to contact your legislator, we will get a note from you to your legislator, and then we will, by email, send you how your legislators vote. You have a state senator and you have a state assembly member. Every Californian has 2 people you've hired through elections to make laws for you. And we want to help you hold them accountable. So you can go to the California Pro-Life Council website to get more information on SB-481 and on the issue at large. And also you can put in your street address and give us your email, because it isn't just that they get the note. It's critically important that you know how they vote and hold them accountable. That's how an accountability system like democracy really is supposed to work. So this is a huge fight, and it's not going away. And we want to equip you as a listener and as someone who really cares. We want to equip you to battle in this battle.
And there's information available, too, at stopassistedsuicide.com. Is that correct?
Yes, that specifically is more pointed out assisted suicide battle. And as you pointed out, we did lose in the legislature. It's still in court. We still hope to push back through that court case, which is slowly, snail-pacing, making its way through the court system. But we're still fighting assisted suicide, per se. But this issue is even more ominous, because the issue of intentional dehydration has been with us for a while. Many remember the Terry Schiavo case. I have been asked to be involved in many cases in California. These things are happening under the radar, and what had been called intentional medical neglect, literally taking away all sustenance, all food and water from a patient. Sometimes opioids are given to suppress the breathing, to suppress the heart rate, and it speeds up the process. The opioids, the patient often isn't in pain. And I just dealt with a gentleman yesterday telling me his story in San Francisco about how his wife was killed. She didn't have pain. She wasn't asking for opioids, and yet the attending physician was ramping up the opioids with the goal of suppressing her breathing. And when you're dehydrated, it basically is that much quicker, and she was killed. And they were trying to hide from this gentleman all of the decisions they were making, because he had power. It's extraordinary what's going on. So the problem has been a change in medicine's role. There's been a change in our view of nursing homes, where we view this as a place to go die. And therefore, medicine sees its role as to, well, speeding that process along, because that's why they're there, to die. So we'll just make it easy. And this is so ominous on so many levels. But we have to begin by understanding and being aware of it. And it's a battle that will come, I promise you. It'll come to your kitchen table. And you need to be ready for it. You need to be ready to deal with the emotions. Very powerful emotions are involved. You need to respect the emotions of people dealing with it. But ultimately, we need to make sure we don't make life and death decisions based on emotions.
More information available on the web, NRLC, National Right to Life Committee, NRLC.org. That's NRLC.org. Our thanks to Brian Johnston, Western Regional Director with the National Right to Life Committee, for that very troubling and yet urgent update.
To follow Life Matters on all social media, go to lifematters.life. Life Matters is a production of the California Pro-Life Council, the state affiliate of National Right to Life.